Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, I am beyond excited to be bringing you a very earlier than expected review for the brand new Transformers Legacy Titan class Cybertron Universe Metroplex. Don't blame me, I didn't name it. I don't know what sense Cybertron Universe makes when, apparently that is differentiated from like Armada Universe and Energon Universe. It's all the same universe, but that's their naming convention, that's their thing. It's silly, just in the same way that there's supposedly a G2 universe, despite that being in the same universe as G1. But I'll try not to get too hung up on naming conventions here tonight. This is a figure that I really wasn't expecting yet, but it ended up dropping at my local Target, so I went and picked it up. They had two there, right on the shelf, which is the first time I've seen that, at least first time I've seen one on the shelf before I actually got one of my own. So yeah, that gives me the opportunity to do this review for you guys. That being said, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at this toy's packaging, then we'll open it up. In the case of a large toy like this, I'll do a bit of an unboxing segment. Then we'll get a good look at the toy's instructions, followed by a very in-depth look at Metroplex himself in his vehicle and 2 robot modes, because he does have 2. Naturally, I'll be doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Metroplex comes in your standard Titan class packaging, which has always been a closed box, and that holds true here. We get this beautiful, beautiful artwork of Metroplex fighting some, I guess a Decepticon and a Predacon, and he is just absolutely wrecking old Beast Wars Inferno there. And we can see Kickback, running for his life. We can see the Nemesis flying in the background, which is the second time we've seen that on Titan packaging. So I really feel like they're trying to tell us something. Like with the Ark, it made sense, right? Because the Nemesis is the antithesis of the Ark. But here, it's just randomly flying around behind Metroplex. So I think they have something in the works, and they're trying to, tease us with that. It also just seems kind of out of place compared to the rest of this as far as the art style. So yeah, there's definitely something to this. We can also, for some reason, see Metroplex in his excavator mode up here, which doesn't really make sense within the context of the picture that they've gone and illustrated here. But it does follow suit with Legacy's whole MO of having, artwork of the vehicle mode and the robot mode. In that same vein, if we go ahead and we turn the box this way, you can see they actually did separate artwork for his smaller robot mode, which I believe is called work mode. At least that's what it used to be called. And it's just kind of a compressed version of Metroplex's robot mode, a bit smaller than, the full giant one. And in the case of this new toy, he gets this, I guess it's supposed to be like a work mask or battle mask thing going on with his head, which is a bit new. Before, he just kept his head more or less the same. And you can see that he's harvesting and gathering Energon. And that's something that the developers, the designers, said that they were kind of going for. Part of the reasoning for him being chosen as the Titan class for this year, despite it being rather out in left field. The whole gimmick with Legacy is Energon, right? They get the Energon weapons, that's kind of what all the Transformers are chasing after. So it would make sense to get a guy that would be able to harvest Energon en masse. So I get what they were going for. I will admit that Cybertron Metroplex would not have been my first choice for the next Titan, and honestly probably wouldn't have been like my 5th either. But I do have to admit that delving into modern generations has kind of focused my mind, kind of one lane on the G1 path, and I hadn't really given too much thought to, potential Titans outside of G1 Titans. Except for maybe Tidal Wave. Everybody's always talking about Titan class Tidal Wave, which will hopefully happen one day. But anyway, stellar artwork as always. I mean, these boxes always look phenomenal. On the top, we get a shot of his excavator mode and then the Legacy logo. Then on this side, we get that Kingdom side panel. Sorry, Kingdom. I'm used to saying that. Our Legacy side panel, the Autobot half of it. And then on the back, we have our renders. So we see the excavator again, which is actually a different picture than the one here. I think this is an actual picture of the toy up top. At least it looks like it is. This one looks to be more of a render. This shows off like the little buzzsaw bit. And then we get a small picture of the small robot mode, or the work mode, whatever you want to call it. And a big old picture of his main robot. He takes 52 steps to transform. I'm a little skeptical. because he is very heavily based on the original Cybertron toy. He's just kind of like upscale, a little more detailed. I don't see 52 steps coming from this, but maybe. That'd be really cool, because that'd be a very intricate transformation. And then on the back here, we can just see them showing off him mounting his weapon to his back. So all in all, pretty cool. Very nice box as always. Legacy packaging is always just beautifully done. Now, we're going to open this up. I've already got the tape cut here, so we can just get straight into that without having to do a jump cut or anything. So open the flap. Let this drop down. All right. What do we got? I can't even see it yet. Oh, there he is. All right, so this just gives us Metroplex. He's a little folded up so that he can fit inside everything. You see his head, you know, kind of halfway buried in cardboard here. Here are the instructions. They're a little bent, not too bad. Get his weapon off to the side. It looks like his weapon comes in two pieces, because here's like the other half of it. All right, so that's our guy. Can't see him too well, but we'll get a really good look at him once I get him unpacked. So here are the instructions. You can see, you know, it's your typical stuff. You got his name, you got your logos, you get the render on the front. Well, these are thick. I guess they need to be, right, for 52 steps. Still calling BS on that, but we'll see. All right, this just shows you how to get him situated from taking him out of the package and how to kind of unfold everything and get it right. This shows you how to connect his two weapon halves together and then have him wield them in a few different configurations or store on his back. And then here we have a transformation to, what is this? Is this the vehicle mode? No, this is the work mode. So that first transformation goes to the small robot mode. And then they have you transform him to his vehicle mode. And it goes right here. Now, one thing, if any of you guys watching are familiar with Cybertron Metroplex or Megalo Convoy, whatever we call them, one thing you may have noticed, there doesn't seem to be a mini-con. And it's true. They did not include a pack-in mini-con for this guy. So unlike the old one, he is completely without his partner. And what I find honestly baffling is, in addition to him not including a mini-con, he doesn't even have mini-con ports on his body. It's a very bizarre choice to me, right? You have this guy who is meant to represent a specific universe that was centered all around the hunt for mini-cons, and they did not sculpt mini-con ports into his body. And we did see the same thing with the recently revealed Armada Starscream. He too lacks his partner and has no mini-con ports. It seems like an odd choice. Now, first of all, I'm not very pleased about the lack of mini-cons. Like, they could have done this. They easily... They're saying that, you know, there wasn't room in the budget to include, like, really? You can't budget a mini-con into a $200 figure? These are $200 now, by the way. I don't know if anybody caught that, but, you know, $30 price jump, so that's cool. That's really cool. I mean, I get prices are going up, but you're going to raise it that much and not include the mini-con? And not sculpt in mini-con ports? Like, can't say I'm thrilled, but it is what it is. So, unfortunately, no mini-con partner, and there's not even a way for him to actually interact with the old one if you happen to have the old one. So just be aware of that before you buy this. He's not going to have every feature that the original had. He doesn't have the Cyber Planet key, like the original, which means he doesn't have a buzzsaw or axe opening gimmick. So while he is a much larger figure than the original and is probably of better quality overall and more posable, he's also missing a lot of key features of the original toy. And part of the appeal of the original toy was just how loaded with like the trilogy gimmicks that he was. So yeah, just something to think about. This may not necessarily be everybody's quintessential version of the character. Okay, we now get our first look at Metroplex's Bucket Wheel Excavator mode. It's the official name of his alt mode. And where it gets its name is this, right here. What, you know, many of us as kids probably thought was just supposed to be a buzzsaw is a bucket wheel. And you can see it's got little buckets. And basically these are gigantic construction machines that take these things and they'll scoop up this way and just tear into the ground, right? And then there's like a track that moves it all too. Now what's really bizarre, what's really interesting about his alt mode is that these typically don't have the shovel on the front here. like the other kind of excavator, so it's kind of like doing double duty excavating. And then he's even got like a little dozer head right here, which I believe these things do sometimes come with, but not usually. So he's kind of an interesting mishmash of, you know, real life vehicles. And we get these up here. These are new to his design. These are pretty much like cable struts, because that's normally how you would raise and lower this thing. Is you'd have cables like running over the tops of these and like going from one side to the other. And I kind of suspect, maybe, possibly, there was at least a thought or a hope of actually having some sort of cables that ran through here, because I don't know how well you can see it, but if you look at these holes right here, these little 5mm holes go all the way through. So it's very conceivable that you could have had just, you know, some sort of a cord, probably something made out of like a fabric or something, you know, run through these and like attach maybe here or, you know, over here or something. It could be done. And you know, even though they didn't do it, doesn't mean you can't customize this guy and actually have these things up here. That way it looks far more realistic. So, you know, it's kind of cool you have that option. These do move a little bit just for merely transformation's sake. One thing that's cool is that he's got his little turrets on the shoulders that are actually pointing outward this time. In the old toy, they pointed backward and weren't the most useful thing. And now they point out, so this thing can defend itself, and they also raise and lower, which is really neat. This does turn on a ratchet, however, you'll see it really does not get very far at all, because there's a little nub right here on the bottom of this thing that hits the robot mode shoulders, so, you know, it's terrible range. I mean, to be fair, neither of these things can reach the ground no matter what you do. Like, it's nothing new to this toy. This design has really never worked, right? Because this thing is very similar to the old one. The old one has the same issue where, like, these things just kind of stick out. You can't actually grab anything. This, because this is longer on this toy, it might be able to actually reach if you can turn it far enough. You'd have to pop this off, I guess, like turn it to the side and see. This may actually be able to like just barely touch the ground, but yeah, it's not a very functional alt mode at all. You know, it was what they had to do to make the whole design work. And I mean, it's got interesting ideas, and it does have a ton of detail. We can see tank treads here, and there are wheels underneath this. This actually rolls pretty smoothly for something so big. So that's very nice. So yeah, I mean, it looks good. It is solid. And because it is being a very faithful adaptation to the old character, which honestly, this is by far the most faithful like non-G1 update they've done in Legacy so far. A big criticism people had, especially for the Prime Universe characters, is that they look so very different from their base designs and were really more of a total redesign than an update. This guy sticks much closer to update territory, and the changes he makes are typically for the better. You know, not including the lack of minicon and all that. But I mean, as far as the engineering posability, generally an upgrade. So that's kind of what most people are looking for when they, you know, hear Prime Universe, Cybertron Universe, anything else that might throw us, RID Universe. They want something that is, you know, somewhat faithful. And I feel like so far this guy captures that. It's got the overall silhouette down and just makes a few small tweaks that are generally for the better. Here, we now have a comparison with the original Cybertron Metroplex. And it's funny, I think this is the first Titan that I've actually been able to compare to its original toy, because pretty much all the Titans up to this point have been G1 based, and I don't have any of the Generation 1 City bots, because I'm not old enough, and getting them on the secondary market goes for absurd prices. So, because Transformers Cybertron was released after I started collecting, I actually have the original Cybertron Metroplex, aka Megalo Convoy. So you can see, again, very, very similar designs. There are obviously differences. You know, the shoulders face a different way. This guy doesn't have your little cable struts up here. He gets like this handle, but it doesn't really look, you know, nearly the same. And what's funny is I used to think of this as a big toy. You know, he was Metroplex, leader of the giant planet of Gigantian. And, you know, compared to the other toys in his line, he was big. He's the tallest one, except for, I think, Primus. Primus is bigger, but, you know, he's a planet. And it's so funny seeing him now compared to a full-size Titan. because this Metroplex here is one of the largest Titans that we've received since they started doing the Titan class. He only falls about 1.5 to 2 inches shy of your G1 Metroplex / Fort Max designs, because those guys are roughly 2 feet tall. This guy, we'll see, comes in at about 22 inches. So no slouch with the size. We've received much smaller Titans in the past. And that's not even counting the combiner ones. So yeah, overall, pretty faithful adaptation. One thing I like about this guy is that his little dozers right here that make a part of his feet, they're much wider and more complete looking. These, were kind of scrawny and look much more like 2 small dozer shovels than 1 big one. This one kind of gives more of the impression of just 1 large scoop there. Another big difference is that the old toy actually had the head on top here. Now is, disguised, it's turned backwards and just has these facing forward, like possibly some kind of cannons or something. This one, the head is just hanging off the back, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, having a head just hang off the back's kind of lazy, but also having visible head syndrome on the top's not much better, so I don't know, kind of neutral on it. Another big improvement, I think, is that this design is just a bit more streamlined with the arms tucked in a little better. These stick out to the side a bit more, and if you look in the back, his hands are very visible. This one, being more complicated, actually does have the hands fold away inside the forearms, so it looks less like a folded up robot and more like some sort of alien construction vehicle, even if, again, that vehicle's not the most functional looking thing in the world. Now is also the time I want to bring out and talk about Metroplex's old partner, the Minicon drill bit. As I mentioned, our new toy does not come with drill bit, nor is he even remotely compatible with this one. And something that really bugs me, you can see he's got these 2 little nubs right here on the top of his shovel that are very close to being the size of Minicon ports. And it's so weird, right? Because they have them here, they're little 5mm pegs, which is fine, but imagine if they just, put the little hole right in the middle, and you could have attached this guy to the top, just like you could actually do here. Because look at this. He was made to plug in nice and flush like that, and form like a little blaster for this front shovel. And look how good that looks. Now, how great would it have been to get a bigger version of him, because it kind of makes sense, right? On Gigantian, the Transformers grew bigger because of the power of the planet, so it would make sense that the Minicons would be bigger too, maybe like deluxe size. How great would it be to have a guy that plugs right here, which maybe he does. I know they did address the fact that this guy doesn't include drill bit. They said it was for budget reasons, which, sure, cheap reasons, that's what I think. But I'll tell you, if they had a deluxe size or so of this guy, or maybe even a large core size, possibly a weaponizer, I can see these being used to possibly connect him to the front here. Maybe it's in the works and they just don't want to say anything yet. I don't know. I would be ecstatic if we got a full-size drill bit, one that's a little cooler looking than this guy, because admittedly drill bit's one of the worst looking Minicons. Really, all the Gigantian Minicons weren't great. Who knows? Maybe that's what those pegs are for. Maybe they're more than just generic use, right? Because you do have 2 pegs here and 3 ports. So yeah, it could just be for general compatibility, but imagine if it's not. If they announce sometime in the next year or so that they're actually going to do a full-size drill bit, I'll forgive them. I will forgive them for not including him here. It's a big if, though, because I'm very upset about this. Now, the one thing I don't see them including, no matter what, because they didn't include any sort of functionality for it, so any addition of it would really just be aesthetic, is a Cyber Planet key. So this thing had a really cool gimmick on this toy. So he's got the spinning little bucket wheel too. It does spin on a ratchet just like the new one. So I popped it off. But his actually turns all the way. Oops. So, functionally this is a little bit better in this mode. Alright, so you take your bucket wheel, you have to rotate a certain way to where this little socket's facing this. Push this in to where these open up and can accept this guy. and boom, it becomes an axe for the robot mode. The fact that that is not included here is blasphemy, because that is one of the coolest things about this toy. A lot of the Cyberplanet key gimmicks were kind of lame on some of the Cybertron toys. Some of them like unlocked things that really should have just been doable without a key. But this was really cool because it powered up his weapon, which is called Spark Drinker, by the way. Spark Drinker. I mean, you know, Cybertron wasn't the best thing ever, but whoever named that thing, they're cool. Spark Drinker. I mean, that's really, really adding to his whole like Celtic warrior mystique. All right, so yeah, the fact that they didn't include that here, and I don't know, you know, there's not really an excuse not to. Originally, I thought it was like, oh, it's because this, you know, has to spin and stuff. And then I remember that this spins too, and they made it work. So, the lack of a Cyberplanet key, which is one of his key features, is annoying. It really is. I mean, it's not the end of the world, right? Anyone that is too young to remember Cybertron isn't going to miss it. And, you know, the toy isn't like that much worse for it. But imagine this thing being able to turn into an awesome giant, like, double-headed axe. Even if you didn't have a Cyberplanet key to do it, like, if it just was part of the transformation, would have been great. But unfortunately, he ends up with something more akin to a buzzsaw weapon that we'll see here shortly. So yeah, that I do not see becoming an addition to this toy. There's really no point to, because there's nothing for the key to do. It would purely just be something that plugged onto a port somewhere and serves no purpose. So I do think it's a shame. I mean, if you are celebrating the history of the brand, don't you want to kind of celebrate some of the key play patterns from the brand too? You would think, but apparently not. But despite that loss of functionality, I still think that this is by far the better looking excavator mode. It just looks like something that isn't a robot doing yoga. So, huge improvement in my book. Hopefully, we get the mini-con down the line somewhere. Okay, now it's time to transform our Metroplex into his work mode, or, you know, small robot mode. So the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and remove these parts of old Spark Drinker. So unlike the old toy where this was all one piece and it came up, on this toy, it comes in two halves that can be separated. And then this is actually part of the robot. So that's one kind of key difference in the construction there. An interesting one. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and pop these out. They're kind of tabbed into these white bits right here. Just gonna pop them out, rotate them. Let's see, this is inward. And rotate the shoulders out like that. So you get something that's actually a lot more similar to the old vehicle mode, which I guess technically you could leave it like that if you want something a little more faithful. So do the same thing here, rotate it in. Rotate this out like so. All right. So get all this kind of separated out. Then we are going to flip these panels. Black bits right here actually detach. Flip 180. We gotta pop them in. And they can be a little hard to get in there sometimes. They will click into place. So do the same thing here. Flip these panels around. And these black bits right here, you're gonna pop off of the knees and pop them on here to close this torso area, like so. All right, now we're gonna start getting this guy kind of stood up. So these bits right here that form the feet, we're gonna go ahead, bring the ankles down, bring all of this straight, like so. It's got some beefy ratchets, you can hear them. I'm actually going to touch on the ratchets here in a minute, because I had a bit of an issue with mine out of the package, but luckily it was easily resolved. Okay, so he has these treads with wheels on them, and as they are, they actually prevent him from standing flush. These flip in, close up. Kind of reminds me of a Masterpiece Ultra Magnus to how his feet work. All right, so you can get that, which allows him to now have nice flush soles on his feet. Okay, Now I want to talk about this part right here. So this forms the pelvic area for like the main robot mode, and it's on this really cool slide mechanism. This is not covered in the instructions at all. And as far as I can tell, this like doesn't need to be in any position for any form, like functionally. I think the idea is that when it's in the vehicle mode, it's supposed to be pushed all the way up like this, and then it pulls down to form a more complete kind of crotch piece in the robot modes. I don't know why it's not included. I mean, they went out of the way to engineer this, and it is really cool, but they never touch on it. It's the weirdest thing. I can't explain it. I don't know why it is like that. Right, now, let's finish this off. Nothing to be blabbing, right? Okay, so this whole section right here lifts up, as you can see. This will fold out. Let's go ahead and bring these arms down some other way. So these rotate downward. Fix the little turret pieces. Open up. You're gonna rotate these this way. Same thing over here. Try not to get that shoulder part to come apart on you. You will try to. You gotta best to kind of pinch this little back and hold it down. Alright, there we go. Alright, there we go. Okay, so we're lifting this up, right? We're gonna actually turn that 90 degrees really the other way. That way you can lift this up as high as it goes. And turn it, and try not to contact stuff. Oh yeah, probably want to flip that piece out right there. Let's see. I'm missing something. There we go. I'm a professional. Alright, so you go like that. For this mode, this little like add panel actually stays in. Alright, we just close all this up like that. Rotate this where the flatter side is at the back of the head here. Alright. Wait, the wheels keep popping open, doesn't it? Alright. So you see what we're getting at. We're getting something that very much resembles the old work mode, I'll call that. Now, where we get a little different. So normally, in the work mode, you just had his head looking like his normal head, and he had his hands out. But they've gone and modified this thing to where it looks pretty significantly different from the source material. Now, there's nothing saying that you can't put it in a configuration that's similar to the old one, but this is like the new official work mode. Alright, so you're going to take the wheel here, push this down just to make it look a little more appealing, and you're going to plug it in here. These clips, same clips that you see on the top of the excavator. So it's that. And the same thing here. Straighten this out, make it look nice and pretty. Come around the other side here. And we just do the same thing. Plug it in. The forearms actually rotate, which is cool. Like they rotate independently of the wrists, so you can rotate these tools while he's in this mode. And we get this. This is work mode, and it's cool. Look at that. So, you gotta go look at it here. You can see that what they basically did was they took the back of his head and put something akin to a welding mask on it right here, and pointed these down and put it pretty much in the same configuration that the old toy's head went in for the excavator mode. Now what's cool is you can see here the introduction of this panel, which flips around to cover up the regular robot mode face so that it's not just hanging out back there. So that's a big improvement. There's no visible face, it's covered by a little shield. And yeah, this is what we get. I think it looks cool. I think it is pretty creative how they went and updated this thing and just made it look like it does something besides be shorter, because the old one was called a work mode, but it didn't do anything. In fact, he couldn't really even do much with his weapon because he's too short to really wield the thing. Now it breaks apart and becomes like tool hand attachments for this guy to do some work. Now, there's one thing I don't like about this mode. There's nothing to firmly plug all this into. It just kind of hangs there. Doesn't latch in anywhere, doesn't do anything. So it's a little iffy, and it does have a rather unsightly like gap right here. I don't know why they just left it like that. I don't think it looks very good, but that's what they went with. I don't know. Probably the worst thing about this mode. Everything else about it I think is cool. I think it's, you know, a really neat idea. I think they were having some fun experimenting with this, and overall it came out pretty well. Here's another group shot with our original Metroplex. And like I said, his work mode wasn't really anything special. It was just a compressed down version of the regular robot mode. So I really do appreciate them going out of the way to help the work mode, you know, differentiate from the regular one. Now what's interesting is you can always like spin this guy's head backwards, and point the little antennae or guns or whatever down, and it does kind of look like a mask, right? Like it looks like some sort of battle helmet or something. And I have a feeling the designers, when they were updating this guy, were inspired by this. Like somebody looked at this and said like, hey, that looks like a helmet. Let's take this a step further and really make it look like some sort of a mask or helmet. So, I mean, I think it's really cool. I think that they, you know, looked at something that maybe was just unintentional, right? Because this is really just light piping more than anything, and then decided to actually make something of it. So, you know, it works out. I think it was very creative on their part. And I love how they made it to where his tools can attach to his arms and become useful and make the work mode capable of actually doing work. Right, so if we look at the old toy Spark Drinker, I mean, it's significantly taller than he is, and you can't really hold this thing in any good way that isn't looking kind of ridiculous anyway. Like, you can just kind of hold it like this, I suppose, and like, yeah, what's he gonna do with that, right? He's like a child holding a tool that's too big for them. So I think it's a huge improvement. I think, you know, them really doing something with this mode and making it more meaningful was just a great move on the designer's part. Right now, for the really exciting part, we're gonna transform Metroplex into his large robot mode. His big old 22-inch tall Titan robot mode. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to detach his tools. Spark Drinker just out of the way for now. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and extend his legs, which will involve very similar transformation to the old one, where you just get the shin pieces kind of stacked on top of each other. Here, oops. Oh, look at these. These like flip down. Isn't that cool? I'm gonna dump them out. These like so. Let's see, I think we just we leave this. No need to spin his waist around this time. Alright, so we have his legs extended. Make sure he's staying in the shot here. Yeah, okay. Got enough room. Alright, so we do that. Rotate him. Flip his hands out. Close the forearms again. Same thing here. Feel them ratchets clicking. They're beefy. Okay, so to extend all this upward, we're gonna take this bit again. Lift that up, flip that out. Yeah, you turn this to the side so we get a little more give right here. All right, so we're gonna carefully bring this around. All right, so we go like this. Lift this part upward, like so. Bring this down, has these little white tabs here. They're gonna plug in the slots right there. Just make sure that's all in the right spot. Hold, and you just kind of push this in flush. All right, let's go ahead, spin the head around, bring it forward. So this little shield right here over the face splits in half, swings out, and it's gonna swing behind his head. Then just kind of rejoin right here on the back, like so. His head looking normal again. This little piece on the back, we're going to rotate it with the flat part that's not diagonal, being on top here. All right, now we're going to fix his shoulders. So pop these open, flip the arm panels, click in place. They may be reluctant to do. Click that over it. Same thing here. All right, we are almost there, folks. Spin around. And we're just gonna raise the arms. These bits pointing down. Officially, if you want. Alright, let's get the legs straightened out here. And what it's supposed to be. Alright. Look at old Metroplex. Isn't that crazy that they made him Scottish? Scottish Metroplex. One thing to keep in mind is that his neck is on a slide right here. So this way you want to make sure it's kind of slid all the way back. On the work mode, I actually find its best position is kind of somewhere in the middle of that slide, but for this one, all the way back, where he gets the most normally placed neck that he can get. Look at that big boy. He is definitely no slouch in this robot mode. Not only is he very, very big, he's incredibly posable. So, as we saw, his head has a rotation and it has a hinge look up and down. And his mouth moves. There's no like gimmick or anything moving, you just gotta kind of grab the chin. But that's great. He can either have like a closed, like stoic face, or he can be, you know, talking, or he can be like a battle, you know, roar or something. Wouldn't recommend opening too wide, because then you can't get to the chin again. It's hard to close it. There you go. Maybe about halfway, just to be on the safe side. So he's got all that. He's got, we already saw those really nice ratchets in the shoulders. They go, you know, forward and back. In and out movement. He's got a ratchet bicep swivel, ratchet elbows, ratcheted forearms, wrists that are not ratcheted, they just turn freely. And I would hold his forearm shut when you turn these because they tend to grab and like pull the forearm apart. So just hold it shut. There's a little bit of friction there. He has thumbs which swing in and out. And then he's got the rest of his four fingers just open and close on one hinge. That's a bit of a downgrade from the old Thrilling 30 Metroplex. He actually had individually articulated fingers, but this guy, he doesn't. It's just one piece, unfortunately. All right, he has a waist swivel, which is a softer ratchet, but still there. Some things get messed up. Yeah, keep in mind this thing needs to stay down here for this mode. It tends to want to pop up on you. That's how it's supposed to be, right there. He technically has an ab crunch because of his transformation, so you can do that a little bit, which is kind of cool. I think it's more of just a freebie than anything. He's got the ratcheted hips. They go out and in, back and forth. Now, when I got this guy out of the box and played with him for the first time between takes, which leg was it? It was this one. There was no ratcheting on the in and out motion at all. It was just flopping around. And I'm thinking like, God, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I've got another bum copy. So I actually went, took a screwdriver, very carefully, opened him up, and took a look at what was inside. And the thing is, I couldn't see what the problem was. There wasn't anything obvious. But I do know that after opening it up, opening the other one, comparing it, I just kind of reseated everything, and now it works. So for whatever reason, it wasn't engaging. Now, one thing I did notice is that the ratchet in this hip is actually lubricated. So there's no springs in these. Now, I'm used to there being springs. No, it's just plastic gear teeth that just collide with each other. No springs at all. So This one had some sort of a, looked like, you know, petroleum jelly or something similar to it on the inside to just help with that motion and prevent like too much grinding on the gears. This one didn't have that, so I may actually go back and reopen him, put like Vaseline in there or something, because obviously there's a reason for it, and I don't want the gear teeth to get worn down over time and then not work again. So yeah, just keep in mind, if you get a copy and one or both of his hips are just kind of swinging in and out, you may need to just open it up, which it's not hard to do. It's like 3 screws on the back. You just open up, carefully pull these apart. They're not glued together or anything. And just make sure the gears are, you know, flush and where they're supposed to be. So it was a bit of an oddity, but luckily it was a quick fix. So I was worried. I was thinking like, awesome, you know? Can't believe I got another dud of a toy, but he's fine. All right, so we saw that. We have a thigh swivel. It's a soft ratchet. Got his knee bend, a very beefy ratchet. And then he's got ankle swivels. So you don't even have to use the thigh swivel. You can use just the ankle swivel if you want to. And ankle rotation and tilting. Now the tilting, at least in my copy, is not a ratchet. I don't know if it's supposed to be that way or not, or if I need to like open these up and look at them too. I mean, they work just fine. But I also know that I had a thing with my Black Zarek to where his hips were not ratcheted. They were firm but not ratcheted, and I thought that that was something like an intentional change I made and took the ratchet out. Turns out that was just my copy. Luckily it doesn't affect him too much. Oh, no, it wasn't his hips, it was his waist. His waist ratchet was gone, or at least not engaging. So I'm not gonna bother opening him, you know, his feet up to check. He works just fine, so I don't see a reason to do that. And now, of course, we gotta take a look at old Spark Drinker here. So, we have this. Need to attach it like so. And just kind of straighten everything out, make it look nice. Rotate this. There we go. Got these both on the same side. All right, so here is combined Spark Drinker. And I mean, it looks cool enough, but again, the blade doesn't open, so it can only look so cool. That's unfortunate. Anyway, we also put this handle down, so he actually has a way to really hold this thing. Now, there's a couple things you can do with Spark Drinker. One is you can store it on his back. I also just realized something. I need to open these up. That's part of the transformation. Open those up like so. Now, the instructions aren't really clear as far as how to position these. You can leave them like this. You can straighten them both out, though that looks kind of dumb. So I'm kind of leaning towards just this. Like, this doesn't swing down anymore, so that's about the best you can get. This one, you can just let it hang. But if you do want to store old Spark Drinker here, we have some holes. There we go, right there and there. So we take this thing, we rotate it, like so. And then we utilize these. One's got a clip on it, one's just a hole for the like other bit to go into. So you kind of slide it over that first one. There we go. Get that there, and you're just kind of pushing everything together until it goes. If it will go. If it'll decide to cooperate. All right, there we go. You need to adjust his ratchets a little bit, not the ankles too much. Let's go with the hips, maybe. One click for the hips. Now, his ratchets are good, they are strong, but they have just enough give to where moving Spark Drinker around, either to the front or the back of him, will shift him forward or back a little bit. So you just need to adjust his hips accordingly. So we can get something like this, where he's just got it sheathed on his back. It looks like some sort of battle axe just kind of hanging out there. That looks pretty cool, right? Kind of a pain to get on because these clips are really tight. But we can undo that, pull this one out, get this straight again, like so. And we can have him hold it. And unlike the old toy, which just had like the one handle, he can actually two-hand this thing, which is really cool. So you want to bring this in, kind of swing it in with his thumb until it meshes with a little slot in his hand, which will be this here. There you go. So I'm going to do that. And then we can have him take his other hand and grip this lower handle. You may have to play with it a little bit to get the right positioning. But you can do it. I believe in you. Alright. Bring on that. Keep this close around it. There we go. It's going. It's going, guys. Aha! Success. Click its hips back the other way. Stand upright with it. Here we go. Look at that. Now he's two-handed this bad boy for the first time in toy form. And it looks awesome. Now he looks like he can really swing this thing around and do some damage with it. It'd look better if this blade split apart. Just saying, Hasbro, care. But it still looks really, really good. And yeah, the fact that he can wield this thing despite its weight, despite the size and everything, really just shows that they put a lot of work into tolerances on this guy. You know, we've had issues in the past with big toys having weak joints and kind of flopping around, but no such issue here. He is really solid and pulls this off very, very well. All right, we're back to doing our comparison with the OG Metroplex toy. And now you can really see the difference in size between these two. Both fully extended. And, you know, the old Metroplex, he was a tall figure. Like, absolutely. He, you know, the way he transformed made him very, very tall and very lanky. But he also did end up looking a little awkward, just the way that he's built. He's, you know, just kind of got this longness to him that looks a little unnatural. And due to the way that this new one's constructed, I feel like they've mitigated that a lot. I think he looks more proportional and more natural than stretched out. Now, there are some downsides to the new toy. As I already mentioned, Spark Drinker is very much hampered by the lack of, you know, splitting blade. We can actually see, you know, the fully activated Spark Drinker right here, and it looks a lot cooler. It looks like an actual axe, right? Also the lack of the minicom, but, you know, I won't really count that against the functionality of the figure itself. One thing I will give them a lot of credit for is that even though the transformation differs between these two in a way that renders certain parts in the old toy, you know, useless or non-existent, they do a really good job of recreating the details. And something I want to point out, these little hinged pieces right here, these flip down and actually kind of hold the alt mode together. They attach to his knees. He doesn't work that way. He has a different transformation, but they actually still included those bits. They're sculpted in there and painted blue. So the details are still there, but now they're just part of his body since they're not actually used for anything. And you can see a lot of the same sculpting and painting and everything between the old one and the new one. They really went out of their way to make this guy look like an actual update instead of a radical reimagining. Which, I'm gonna say, I know some people were fans of the whole like G1ification of non-G1 characters. And I mean, to an extent, I think that's necessary to get them to, you know, aesthetically work within Legacy. But I don't think you need to like reinvent the characters wholesale. Now, I'll admit, I do like that new Bulkhead for what he is. And I have, you know, grown a bit on the RC. But I would be lying if I said that I didn't wish they were, you know, a bit closer to their original designs. Because Generations, to me, is primarily about updates, right? It's about providing modern versions of classic characters. And then throwing some new characters and stuff in, too. But those I felt were just a little too far off the mark from the usual designs. This guy, I feel, really does a great job of balancing the old with the new. You know, taking what worked, getting rid of a lot of what didn't. And for the most part, I think he very much succeeded. The proportions and everything just work so much better. He looks cooler. His head scales better. It's not quite as small as the old ones. It's not all squat looking. He just looks like a cool, intimidating robot, which is, you know, that's the whole point, right? Titans are supposed to be these awe-inspiring Transformers, and I think he really fits the bill. He looks awesome. Now, we get to do a group shot with the original Titan class, the other Metroplex, Generation 1 Metroplex. Though, arguably, also kind of war for Cybertron Metroplex. So, this is the one that started it all, right? The very first Titan class. And we can see just how much has changed over the years. This toy, by today's standards, was very, very simple. The, you know, base modes and vehicle modes were incredibly simplistic. You had hands just sticking out everywhere. He had the size, he and Fortress Maximus are still the tallest Titans that we have. But you can see that even when you get a Titan that's almost as tall as this guy, I mean, they're very, very close in height. You can see how much the engineering has improved in that time. Especially when it comes to, you know, the articulation and everything, the sturdiness of the joints, and then even the transformation is far more involved on a new Titan than it is the old ones. So, you know, as much as we like to decry things the way they are, and I mean, don't get me wrong, there are definitely, you know, a lot of instances of cost cutting really ruining a toy. I mean, heck, the fact that this guy doesn't have a minicon is a good example. But we can also see a lot of the improvements since, what was it, 2013 or so? So almost a decade since the first Titan was released. And, you know, this guy is just a far more fun and interesting toy than the old one. Now, I will admit, and it's a bit hypocritical of me because I always kind of roll my eyes when we get, like, the same characters over and over. When I first heard that the next Titan was going to be a Metroplex, I was thinking an update to this guy. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want, you know, because, you know, he's cool, but he's so outdated and he can't connect to any of the other Titans, which is, you know, something that's pretty unique amongst the city bots. Like, they never engineered any sort of connector ramps or anything for him. And then, you know, we got Fort Max and Trypticon, and they had their ramp system. And then we got Omega Supreme that served as a bridge between the old ramps and then the airlock ramps, and then, like, all the other Titans had the airlocks, you know. This guy, you know, he's kind of a standalone, so I was hoping for something that was, you know, more interconnective, more compatible with today's stuff, and more articulated. So when I found out that it was going to be Cybertron Metroplex, I was kind of disappointed. One, because I always thought his design was a little wonky, because, I mean, the old toy wasn't that great. But also, dealing with Generations and the very G1 bend that it has to it, I've been kind of conditioned to expect G1 stuff. Especially when it comes to city bots, right? Because that's where most of the city bots come from. Now, I've since softened my stance on the fact that we're getting this Metroplex instead of a new version of this one. And admittedly, it is a little more interesting than just getting the same character again. There's still going to be that small part of me that hopes that, you know, one day we get a better version of this guy, one that is actually a little more G1 accurate than what, you know, this one is. And just better engineered, more compatible with other figures. But in spite of my feelings on the choice of character they went with, I cannot deny that this is just a better toy than this. We've really come a long way as far as what we can do at this price point. Now, they are about $50 more expensive than when this guy came out. You know, you're talking about a 1/3 or 33% increase, but he was also released 10 years ago. So, you know, some of it's warranted, some of it's not. If this guy had been closer to like 170 like the last Titan, I wouldn't be so bothered by the price, because I do feel he's easily worth about 170. But 190 to 200, depending on where you get him, that is steep. They're really killing our bank accounts lately. Here's a fun little group shot with the only other two characters from Transformers Cybertron that have been given the post-War for Cybertron trilogy update so far. We have our Galaxy Upgrade Optimus Prime, which is meant to represent, you know, the Cybertron Optimus Prime, and then we have our Cybertron Defense Hotshot. Now, these aren't perfect updates. They are, you know, quite a bit further off the mark than this guy is. Our Optimus, his super mode looks pretty spot on to the original, but his inner robot is very, very G1, and then his vehicle mode is, it's iffy, it's kind of there. Hotshot, he's just a Hound retool, so, you know, aside from being just kind of a boxy looking vehicle, he really doesn't have much in common with his old toy. The old toy was like an armored carrier, and he's a Jeep, more or less, Cybertronian Jeep. So, you know, he was just one of those quick new head retools. Now, we do have Override coming. She's already been revealed and, you know, is, I think, available in some parts of the world. That or people are just getting stolen copies. So we will be able to add Override, aka Nitro Convoy, to this list of Cybertron updates. And like Metroplex here, she is sticking very, very faithful to her original design. She's like a pure update. So that's really cool. It also means that we have 2 of the 4 planet leaders, right? 2 of the 4 bearers of the Cyber Planet keys. So we have our leader of Gigantian, And then we're getting our leader of Velocitron in the form of Override. Now that does just leave us with Scourge and Evac. Now Scourge, I can definitely see him getting an update because he's got a very cool three-headed dragon design. Evac, I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll do him. I always thought he was pretty lame. I mean, he wasn't really even a ruler per se. He was just like a guy hiding out on Earth guarding the key. And he was kind of a nobody. I really consider maybe Optimus more like the Transformer leader of Earth. So if you do think of him that way, if you think of him as the keeper of the Earth's, cyberplanet key, we do kind of already have him. He may not be a perfect update, but he looks good at least in this mode. Now, one thing I will say that is pretty neat is that the general trend of modern Transformers compared to stuff from like the Unicron trilogy, they tend to scale smaller per size class. And this Optimus is a good example of that. He is much smaller than the old leader class Cybertron Optimus. But then we get this guy who's been upgraded from leader to Titan class and is much larger. So they actually have an increased difference in height this time around, which does put them closer to being in scale with each other. Now, it's not realistic to get them actually in scale, because if they were, Optimus would be probably like this big, right? Metroplex is meant to be huge, almost the size of an actual city bot. So obviously they can't do that, but he is at least roughly in scale with the other Titans. So matching scale is great when it's feasible, but when you have bots that turn into cities, basically, what can you do? You're gonna have a house-sized Transformer, so that's not really gonna work. So yeah, this is a very small little collection so far. We'll have a fourth member soon, and I wonder if we're gonna get anything else down the line. I know I've seen listings for another Hotshot in Legacy, but I have a feeling that's probably going to be the Armada version, because that is the most famous version of Hotshot out there. I could be wrong, but I have a sneaking suspicion it'll be the Armada version, especially since they just kind of sort of gave us the Cybertron one. Who knows? Maybe it'll be another Cybertron, maybe it'll be the Energon version, maybe it'll be the animated version, who knows? I have a strong feeling Scourge is coming eventually, and then outside of that, I'm not really sure. I don't know who out of Transformers Cybertron is iconic enough to get their own, new toy. I'm sure we'll get plenty more from the greater Unicron trilogy, it just may not be specifically the Cybertron incarnations, so you may have to settle for getting characters from kind of across the entire trilogy, rather than getting a whole bunch from one specific chapter or show. And this now is going to complete our look at the brand new Titan-class Metroplex. Normally this is the part where I put a toy on a turntable, but he's obviously way too big for my little turntable, so just gonna have to get a static look at him while I close this out. So overall, I am satisfied with this toy. I actually think it's a great transforming toy. It's got 3 modes, which a lot of Titans do, but all 3 of them are fairly solid, because let's be real, a lot of the other Titans, especially the older Titans, their alt modes are pretty janky. I mean, his isn't the most realistic looking thing. They were going for keeping him faithful, and they did a good job at that, and then just did some tweaks to make him, a little better, look a little bit cooler than the old one. And then his 2 different robot modes, I think, are great. And I love the creative way they kind of reinvented the work mode to make it look like something akin to a working robot mode, instead of just a short version of him. Now, you can technically recreate the original one. If you want to be a purist, you just keep his head facing the normal way and have his hands out instead of hidden away, and that's pretty much the old work mode. So I think he's got a lot of versatility. He's got great engineering, amazing posability. He looks cool. He looks so much cooler than the old toy. My only gripes now, when looking back at what used to be and then what we're getting now, and this is something that's only going to come from someone who has actually been around the hobby long enough to know what came before. The lack of the Minicon really kills me. They say the budget would allow it, but I'm like, come on. I mean, we've received plenty of Titans that have partners. The old Metroplex came with a partner. Trypticon did. Fort Max and Scorponok and all their recolors and retools all had a headmaster partner that had its own headmaster partner. Even the Ark has a partner in the form of Mainframe. He's really the first one, not counting combiners, right? They're their own thing. But first, Citybot type Titan that doesn't have a small pack-in partner. And they're saying, well, the budget wouldn't allow for him. Look, he's good, but he's not so leaps and bounds ahead of the Titans that have come out, very recently, like the Ark and Black Zarek. He's not so much further ahead than them to where he couldn't get a pack in, especially when he's $20 more than the most recent ones, or $30 more, depending on where you get them. So I'm really not buying that, as far as comparing him to others. Now, when they say the budget doesn't allow for it, it could just be that their budget's tighter than it used to be, right? We are in a bit of financial turmoil worldwide, and maybe the budget is just smaller now, and that's really unfortunate because it means we're kind of taking some steps back. So I'm not a fan of that, right? Things are supposed to move onward and upward and get better with time, not worse. So I think this recession that we're seeing may be affecting our toys, because, really, deluxe or core size partner for this guy should not have been outside of the realm of possibility for $200. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I really don't. So I think he's a great Titan. I really do. I just feel that they could have done more with that. Or if they're not going to do the pack and partner, they should have done the splitting axe blade, at least one or the other for this price. And then the other one that really just kind of blows my mind is the lack of Power Links points, right? Minicon connection points. That doesn't require anything. It's just part of the molded detail. He's got other details and other bits that stick out and stuff, but they completely just nixed any and all Minicon ports and instead just kind of covered him with like a slew of 5mm ports. That one really kind of baffles me. Like, really? You couldn't at least make him compatible with just Minicons in general? That would have at least made him compatible with his old Minicon partner. They didn't, and that one's weird to me. And I know, like I mentioned, they did the same thing with the Armada Starscream, but then Prime Universe Bulkhead of all characters has Minicon points. Make it make sense to me. I don't get that. So, like, out of all my grievances with the toy, that's the one that I really have to look at and be like, come on, really? Would that have changed the production cost of this thing that much? So, I don't know. It really looks like they're just avoiding Minicons like the plague. I wonder if it's because the Micromasters didn't do very well in the War for Cybertron trilogy. Those things went on deep clearance like all the time, except for like select few ones, like your cassette tapes, because obviously, people want those for Soundwave. Maybe the Micromaster scared them off from doing these small Transformers. I don't know. But that bugs me. Now, I am holding out hope. I have a feeling we are going to get Drill Bit in some form. Probably like a weaponizer or something. Because this guy being bigger means proportionally his Minicon would be bigger. And I can see something that's the size of a deluxe or a core, maybe attaching to, like, the front of his shovel there. But who knows? Time will tell. If we never get it, I still think it's a solid Titan. I'm not crazy about how much they're charging for him. Despite the fact that he's good, he's really only about as good as the last few that have come before. Especially, like, the Scorponok one. Scorponok one was fantastic. Him and Black Zarek especially. Great toys, and I don't think this guy is that much better than either of them to where he should cost as much as he does and be lacking so many key elements that make the character, who he is. So, do I think he's worth buying? I do. I think, if you are willing to pay the price they're charging for Titans now, I think he's very much worth it. I think he's a great toy. I had a lot of fun with him. I think he looks so much better than the original. His colors are brilliant. The amount of white on him does scare me because we know that yellowing has been a major issue with modern toys. And I hope they've got that figured out now because he's got so much beautiful, bright, like, bleach white on him. Like, way whiter than the old toy, and he looks good. If that all starts turning yellow, that's a lot of yellowing on this guy. So we'll see what happens there. Even the gray could start to yellow. So we'll see. But if the yellowing's not a big issue, and that doesn't end up being the case, I think he's worth picking up if you have the funds. I know times are tough right now, and $200 is asking a lot. But if $200 is just the new general price for Titans, then he's worth Titan price, right? He's just as good as the last few that have come out. If you're a G1 purist, you may not find much reason to get him. But if you're somebody who either really liked the Unicron trilogy or just want really cool looking Transformers, like I like him better than I like the Arc. I found the Arc to be very disappointing, and like the ship mode and the robot mode was like, it was okay, but not great. Really, my favorite thing about the Arc is mainframe, which is weird that the pack-in partner is my favorite part. But it really is, and I think that speaks to the weakness of that toy. This guy, I think he's great. I think he did everything the old toy did from, you know, just the standpoint of the character himself, and then made it all better. So I recommend picking him up if you got the money. Even if you're somebody who was put off by the idea of getting this guy, like I was, because I always thought his old toy was kind of junk. He's such an improvement. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised if you pick him up. Of course, that is just how I feel about this new Metroplex. So now I want to know what you all think of this toy. Is this one you've been looking forward to, or are you a little more skeptical about it, or you just absolutely did not want this because you don't like the character, you don't care about Unicron Trilogy or anything? Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this very, very exciting look at the brand new Transformers Legacy Titan class Cybertron Universe Metroplex. And with all that said, I will see you next time.